Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back once again to another fantastic episode of Stories Around Azeroth. As always, I am the magnanimous Pete Titans Creed Nethercoat, joined by the best co-host this side of the galaxy, one Frazley Tastic. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing good, and thank you. It's always fun waking up on a Sunday and being like, I get the podcast with Pete.
I don't know why anybody's excited about that. I'll be honest. I just do a charity stream once a year. I shave my head because people force it, and then it grows back in 2 weeks. It's fine.
And yeah, you're like my personal game coach because like you tell me in game always I'm doing it wrong.
No. I don't say you're doing it wrong. I'm saying that this is what you can do to improve.
Okay. Yes.
But joining us today is an honor and a privilege once again to be joined by someone great from around the Warcraft community. And today we are being joined by TruVillainManny. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I also am very happy to be up today and joining you guys in this podcast. So like I'm gonna echo Frazley. Like it's an honor. I'm very happy to be here.
Well, I'm glad.
Yeah, glad to have you here because it's like I think Manny.
See, I've got stoic Briticism, whereas Frazley is just literally my energy that keeps me going. All the time.
No, I thought it was very laid back. I thought it was one of those laid back podcasters and streamers. Welcome to Stories Around Azeroth.
No, that's what I do. I just like lean back on my chair and I'm like,
yeah,
this is the thing. Like, that's just
Oh, okay. I'll sit down.
Yeah, well, you and your standing desk, I swear. But yes, it is an absolute honor and privilege to be joined. Thank you very much for taking some time out of your day to join us and chat about some Warcraft with us. It is, it's going to be a fun old session. But, as we normally do, why don't we get started with saying what we've done in the world of Azeroth this week? And, Manny, why don't you start and let people know what you've been doing and where they can find you and everything else, like what you've been up to.
Okay, well, so in general, I've been doing a lot of things for World of Warcraft, so people can find me on my podcast that I do with Jocelyn Kearney. That's for Azeroth. And they can also find me on Twitch and Twitter at TruVillainManny. That's true without the E, where, it's World of Warcraft all day, every day. So I've been doing a lot of stuff in the beta, as we are now in the beta for Shadowlands, testing out various things. My big sticking point is that I'm usually shaman focused. That's my class of choice. I now have been moving to doing alts, demon hunter and that sort of thing, where that became an entire thing where I was like, okay, which alts am I going to do? But anybody who knows me, I'm the guy who likes to min max thing. So okay, I want to do all the covenants, so it's going to be 4. If I'm going to do 4 different characters, what's the maximum value I can extract out of 4 characters? So I made sure that they were a range of characters that could tank, heal, and DPS in relatively even numbers, that they spanned all 4 of the different armor types, so I've got leatherware and all of that, and that they were, of course, just fun, because even with me trying to min and max, I really want to show that at all levels of the game you can just enjoy it, whether you are pushing for high level keys or whether you're just questing daily stuff. It's just finding the maximum amount of fun and the minimum amount of frustration is the main way I like to min max.
Well, and by min max, you mean one of your alts is you're minning by being a gnome, right?
No, I'm also very much playing on the horde.
Okay, I'll excuse that.
I did have a goblin way back in one of those lost alts, and my shaman has basically race changed, or I've made a new shaman so many times. At this point, I've had 13 various incarnations of my shaman, whether I've made a new shaman or if I've just completely changed the shaman from one thing to another. I guess I have mained Alliance back in BC when I had to play a Draenei shaman, because that was the big thing for me. But it's always just been about playing the game the way that I like to, and trying to enjoy it as much as possible. I like to also try and educate people about the systems. Like, obviously, everybody starts somewhere, and one thing that I learned either through playing World of Warcraft or through cooking is that there's a lot of terminology, a lot of confusion, but like once you understand it, it's actually pretty quite easy to do.
Yeah.
Go through.
And there's even still like I remember when I came back in 2016, I was having issues with like some of the systems, learning them, and then once you get it, but I still find there were days I'm like, I didn't know about interrupts until about February of this year.
Well, I mean, when it comes to classes though, like Frazley, I mean, as we've mentioned a lot of times before, there's a varying level of people that play the game, from people that play it like super casually and enjoy it from what it is, like yourself, to, you know, raiding heroic content, or has raided like mythic previously, myself. And then Manny, I'm not sure what sort of level of content you do in the game, if you just play it for more enjoyment, like, but, you know, deep dive on more of the classes. So, but
Yeah, for me, I've shifted between different levels. Obviously, it was quite casual. In Wrath of the Lich King, I sort of started kicking it up, where I was trying to do like high level heroic 25, trying to get the Lich King down on my server. And then, like, I think the highest I've been is trying to hit one of taking the guild along with myself and many other people, trying to like hit high level top 100 US guilds, and then within the same expansion becoming an LFR hero. So like I've been all over the map with this sort of thing, and that's where I sort of stay. I try to talk about casual and hardcore not as a dichotomy but as a spectrum, and even then it's not linear. You can be hardcore about one part of the game but completely casual about another part.
yeah, I'd agree with that.
Like by being in podcasting, I realize I know more about stuff. The stuff I don't know, like I still don't understand all the stuff that's happening with like the soul binds, and I admit that, like all this, but it's amazing that, like, because I'm in a lot of the news, I hear a lot of the news, and people are like, "What's going on?" I'm like, "Oh, you didn't hear about this?" And they're like, "No."
I find that there's a lot of things, especially when it comes to the news of WoW, especially in the last couple of weeks. Like, there's been so much to try and digest. But yeah, there's always going to be stuff that you watch for because you're more interested. As we know, there's people that are going to be watching just specifically for cosmetics, and then there are going to be people that want to see how Covenants of Soulbinds work, and there are going to be people that want to see how the raiding works and everything else. There are always going to be like news that will appear for more importance than other things, you know.
Yeah, and it definitely like depends on like what you're covering, because like what would you say is like the main focus that like on a for Azeroth episode, what do you need to get out each week?
So we try and cover PvE because I'm not a PvE player. There is a focus towards raiding and the end game content around there. We do Mythic Plus, we do raiding. Obviously, with that is the difference between myself and Jocelyn, where Jocelyn is more casually minded, where I am trying to like again push myself further. But we're on the same raid team, dealing with the same content, but approaching it from completely different angles. And I think that's what really speaks to For Azeroth, is that people with different mindsets can tackle the same content and view it completely differently. And that's different than like somebody who is far more hardcore minded, right? That could be going against content that is far less, versus somebody who is far more casually minded, but is still like pushing far higher than either of us is, and like keeping that in mind. So that's the kind of take it is. The other part is that we try to be just gamers like everybody else. My story is that For Azeroth ran from episode 1 through episode 34, and I was not a part of it. It was Jocelyn and her co-host then, Garrett. And then it went on hiatus. And I was a fan of the show. And I hated that it was on hiatus. And I was like, no, I want more episodes. And I had been invited to Jocelyn's guild and Garrett's guild. And I rolled a Death Knight. And that's one of the alts. And I decided to name the Death Knight Faz. Because in that way, Joss Healing would have to keep Faz alive in some method.
I love that. I love the fun and the wordplay.
So... after annoying her for so long, she finally came to me and said, like, listen, if you want to bring this back, well, here's your opportunity. And it was basically a put up or shut up moment for me. And I went and I said, okay, you know what? I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. So I went from a fan of a show to a co-host of the show. But it's not like I suddenly had to like learn a bunch of things or start acting differently. I am, and still was back then, just me, just another person who enjoyed the game, who decided that they were going to share their opinion. And that's a big part of for Azeroth, is that it's just the voice of regular players who enjoy the game that are sharing that enjoyment with everybody else.
And I appreciate that, because I saw this one podcast on rating, and they were like on live stream pulling out spreadsheets, and I'm like, you lost me at the spreadsheets.
I mean, spreadsheets is like, I don't even think like top 1% use spreadsheets to like that example. Like the only time I've really ever heard spreadsheets come into play in an MMO was EVE Online, obviously, but
they had their spreadsheets. I think Pete, you and I know who this one was that had spreadsheets.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie, there are spreadsheets. Anybody who's part of the guild knows that I like track people's different things on a spreadsheet that's a free access. When I'm going through and I'm testing stuff on the beta, I'm not a full theory crafter, but it is something that I'm interested in. So I do track things on the spreadsheet, so I can say, oh, like currently on this build, you have a buff that lasts 60 minutes, but actually deactivates after 30 minutes. And I was able to track that. It's like little minutia stuff that like I actually find fun to dig into, but it's not what you're going to see on my stream. I don't find that it's universally appealing, but but having the ability to figure out how things work is something that I think that has value to people. Like maybe not so much that like, oh, this is how you calculate what your verse is, but knowing that when you do get more of this stat, that it actually affects the value of other stats, and here's a resource that you can use for that. And that's what I like to do, is give people resources so that they can figure out like, okay, I want to use this versus this, rather than just using the guide. I can figure it out for myself.
So I assume you have like a systems background for what you don't go into what you do. But I'm just saying, but I math and engineering is a passion.
It is a passion, but not an educational background. I actually have an educational background in graphic design, so I'm an artist who likes math.
That's cool.
And so like it's a funny thing where I use the left half of my brain and the right half of my brain. I have some art awards and all of that, but I typically will be talking about numbers. I would say that there is an artistry in math, and so I'm one of those people that when Blizzard's like, yeah, some RNG is needed, I'm like, yes, some RNG is needed. But when people are like, oh, that's random, it's like, no, nothing in computers is ever actually random.
No, even random.org is like random up to a point, but there's like a whole math that they have to do to get it random.
Yeah, they have a incredibly complicated mathematical equation to simulate randomness.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty big. Frazley, you've had a busy week in Warcraft this week. Why don't you tell us about it?
Yes. So this past week, did a couple different things. Like I realized the order halls, I don't have many of the things done. Like I got to go back and get some mounts and some quests. So I took my mage into this because I like to manage order hall. I actually was a mage when I was maining Horde the beginning of Legions. That's a fun fact. Is I'm Alliance, but I mained Horde. And an orc too, so
I'm going to interject one point here. I'm going to say that you played a Legion mage on Horde, and yet when you were leveling a mage on Alliance, you still didn't know you could ice block to drop the cauterized D.
I never said I was good at the game. Oh, you see me having to always learn how to do new things. I had to, so yeah, I had to work on the mage. I was dying in Eye of Azar because I needed that for one of the things. So I took the time, did some of the quests, and I'm going back and like I'm working on gearing itself up. I did learn from Grand Nagus, and I assume people know about this. If you do the Nazjatar thing, then you will get a free skip to 50 on your heart.
Oh yeah.
I had no clue on that.
Yeah, no, they because that used to be up from it used to be the 35 skip, and then when the last patch content came out, they changed it to up it to 50.
So see, I'm glad that he told me, because he's into alt. I mean, he's on podcasts about alt, so it was good that he told me about that. And I still got some more stuff in the order hall, but on the mount runs, I didn't get a lot except for transmog, but I got a mount that dropped Wednesday and had me totally floored because I had no clue that it was going to drop. Like, I got Ashes of Alar.
You did. I accidentally skipped past it on the stream content, but
I didn't even realize that it dropped, because I'm like okay, you know, I was like I heard an achievement sound, and like I know count things that I'm acting when I do my wows.
You did this with the Time Reaver as well. Like, you
that one was, yeah, I was like, and I felt
man, there's 2 mounts I don't have. I'm so jealous.
I've just been going in like Spaz has told me I should be farming Ice Crown and everything because I still want Invincible, but I'm like, I don't want to see Lich King more than once a week. I know I could probably get it sooner, but it makes it's my weekly thing. But yeah, no, Ashes dropped, so I can finally say bye to Tippus Keep. I did go back there because there are some toys and pets later on, but
Manny, do you want to hear a fun little story?
Oh, tell me.
Oh,
before I told him it dropped from Kael'thas, he was farming just Alar for the mount.
Oh,
yes, the longest time. So see,
my friend did that too. Coincidentally, a mage. Maybe it's
and
a
people
mage
in
thing.
chat. I would whenever I do Tippus Keep, I tell people about it, and I get people in chat all the time like, I did that too. So see, it's not just me. There's like many people who believe that way. Oh,
yeah, it's all good. But you got it. You got the Ashes of Alar. What? It's still one of the best mounts in the game. It's a shame that they watered it down by making the guild mount a purple variant. But
hey, this one is like purple, because purple is becoming one of my favorite colors. So it is. I love it, and I love the trail on it. So it is now, I think, one of my favorite mounts because it's glorious.
So when are you gonna start doing Dragon Soul to feel my pain then?
I've been doing up to Atraxion, so that has been happening on those. I'm just not going on the spine right now. I don't want to do spine breaking work yet.
No, you don't need to. Spine, like, unless you need all the drakes from like.
I do still need the drakes from Deathwing, but I'm like, one of these days, because whenever I get to the place where I need more mounts to farm, I'll then work on that. But I got plenty of things to do already in WoW.
Yeah, no, there's a lot there, and Fraz is spazzing out on his stream right now because he got Ashes. It's all good. Have you been up to anything else?
Not really in WoW. I mean, just other than that, been doing like Diablo. I just got to do one Greater Rift 20, and I'll have most of the season 21 stuff done. I'm not going to go past Greater Rift 20 right now, but that's.
I mean, you just like everything else, you play it down to what you want to play it for. You know, if that's the goal you've set yourself, then it's all good. You know,
like even the Friendship Dragon, I don't expect to get one this year because the timing's just not working. And I'm like, hey, whoever gets Friendship Dragon, I'm so happy for them. I got the last 2, so I'm lucky to get those. But I'm not pushing for AOTC, but I'm glad for anybody who has it because that is a gorgeous purple dragon.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of really nice looking mounts in the game at the moment.
And anybody who got Gladiator will be able to get that on all their characters.
Yeah, no, that was a big bit of news. There's more account wide stuff coming into the works. I'm hoping we still get a lot more, but yeah, no. Shadowlands it's becoming they really feel like they're trying to get into the thing of like, look, we know you guys want to play more on your alts and use your entire account. Here's some more stuff we're giving to you.
Well, and you saw the big one, that add-ons, you don't have to stop the game anymore or restart the client to change and add add-ons. Like they had up to a point, but it's like I know DBM put out a tweet saying, "Hey, if you're in WoW, do not update." But now they're going to be adding that. And yeah, as Jetface said, even more inclusivity. They've added Pelagos. You can actually talk with Pelagos and see why, and talk with him about his choice. And it's so cool the stuff that they're adding to Shadowlands.
Yeah, no, there's a lot coming. Myself, I can't really talk about what I've done in Warcraft this week because it comes down to the same amount of stuff. I've been mount farming and that's it. Although, my copy of Shadows Rising did turn up from America this week. And I'm on chapter 2 so far, so...
Same.
I find it entertaining that my hardback from America arrived before the softbacks in Europe were delivered.
Okay, so I gotta ask you guys a question before we move on from mount farming. Because this week... Chew Boots pretty much challenged me, threw down the gauntlet about collecting mounts. So now I'm actually pushing for mount farms. How many mounts do you guys have?
I'm actually going to check Frazley's armory right now. Armory.frazley.com. So I'm going to... That was a plug for it. And are you familiar with the tool that Pete showed me about the mount collections, telsa-productions.co.uk?
No, I was not aware of that.
I just put that in chat because that's what I've been using. 259 on the account collected. For the stables, not as many on there. Like maybe like I'm close to 200 on the stables achievement.
Oh, okay.
Which one do you use? Sorry. Oh, Tesla.
Yeah, or Telsa, not Tesla.
Telsa. Yeah, I keep looking at it and calling it Tesla.
I'm the one who brings energy to Telsa.
Yeah. How many do you have, Manny? That's the real question, I guess.
How many do I have? Oh, yeah. I believe my last count put me at 389.
Nice. Wow.
So, on a single character, I'm on 438.
Nice.
On the account, it's a little bit more than that because I've got some of the horde mounts, but yeah. My mount farming literally at the moment is 3 of the 4 Pandaria world bosses, Rookmar in Warlords, and then I go and do Nighthold, normal, heroic, and mythic. Because I'm not doing Tomb at the moment, and I'm not doing what's the place? The planet in the sky. Argus. Yeah, I'm not doing Argus for the dogs or the mythic on a weekly rotation yet, but. You know, I don't think I've got any of the 8.3 mounts yet, and that includes the one from Visions. But I do have, like, I've got the Mail Muncher. I tell a lie. I've got the 3 variants of the Serpent. I have the Black Serpent. I've got the raiding achievement one. I've got the Mythic Plus one, and I've got the Mail Muncher from the Visions, but I don't have the drone from the actual mementos. But I have enough Visions to run them, and now that they've nerfed Visions into the floor, I might go and do it. You know?
I'm still hesitant to do it. I'm in the same place where it's like I just need like another 25k, and I'm just like, ugh.
It's the problem is that if you want to properly memento farm, it's like half an hour a run, and I'm like. That's a lot of brain death to have, and I feel like I just want to have music on in the background and just stream it and go at it, because at least then somebody might join me in chat, and then I can blame them when I make a mistake. So,
hey, you never blame chat.
No, you always blame chat.
Oh, man,
I'm new. I don't know. I'm trying to look for advice here, and I'm getting 2 completing examples.
Look, the streamer is always right. You go to watch the stream.
Manny, you just started. Don't listen to Pete. No. And next Pete's going to tell you that you should always call out lurkers. You should look at who's in your chat.
No, not at all. Not
okay,
at all.
good.
What you should do is you should always raid me or Frazley if we're live. You know, once you finish the stream, give subs to my channel. No, don't do any of this.
Have you seen the one?
I do need to raid Frazley. That is definitely something that will happen. It's just that I stream pretty late. I stream at like 9 Eastern and usually finish 11 at the earliest.
I'm usually asleep by.
I don't know what time that is. No, that's yeah, no. It would probably be easier for me if I had the ability to stream during the day. but I don't because I look after my 99-year-old nan.
Yeah.
Like, so I don't really have the opportunity to like stream during the day, and so normally I'm streaming during the evening when the Americans are streaming. So, you know, I occasionally I get to pass things over to Frazley or somebody else who's on at the same time, but.
Did you see the tweet somebody was doing about like Twitch affiliates each subbing to each other? And I'm like, it is true. Like someone will sub to me, and I'll sub back to them. I mean, not a sub for sub. I will never do sub for sub, but
the best streaming advice I think I could actually probably give is to find people with similar interests who are streaming, whether it's Warcraft or some of your other favorite games from your youth that you like, and like try to get to know their community, and who knows, you know, they might turn around and raid you like down the line, and their community might mix with your community. But you've just got to be careful, like making sure that everybody can mesh together, you know.
And as someone said, like on raids, make sure that that like if you're playing a game that you try to get people that mesh with the game that you were already playing. Otherwise, you're going to lose all the people. I think it's similar to what you said, Pete, but a little different.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's always good. It's very hard to try and give out information when you're as small as you are, because it's like, yeah, this works and this works, because it's just like everything else. Like it's a hard grind. Like before we were live, we were talking about YouTube videos and getting into podcasting, and it's you think it's easy, but then you look at everything behind the scenes and it's like it's a ball ache. Like if you've done YouTube, it's easy to get into streaming, like to start
with, you know, with your community. If you build a community on YouTube, you can be like, hey, I'm over here. Like I noticed, like I think like Bionic Pig and Peanut Butter Gamer, they have really ballooned on Twitch.
I was more talking about getting your overlays and bits and pieces set up.
Okay, yes.
Okay. Because you're good with that sort of like how you want stuff to look with end cards and everything else. A level of graphic design. There you go, Manny, as you said.
Yes, Manny, you've got a leg up on me on that. So I...
Yeah. Honestly, I think that's part of what helped me. But learning the software, and then even that was fairly easy because I have sort of a background in that. But for streaming, it's been more than just like, making sure that the like layout looks good. It's finding your voice and like what your stream is about, because there's so many streamers out there, and that's where I've been looking to like streamers like Frazley, like my co-host Joss, who have been at it and have sort of found their voice, and like, well, like, how do you do that? Because like there's so many people who play World of Warcraft, right? So when people tune in for me, right, that's what they're tuning in for. They're not looking for like high level plays, because they can go watch like the cutting edge raiders for that as well. So I've really been trying to find my voice and trying to make sure that like I am giving something that is more than just like, here's World of Warcraft gameplay.
I think when it comes to WoW specifically, like people don't tune into Twitch to see high level like PvP play or high level mythic play. You know, they go there for the entertainer themselves. Like, I mean, sure, some of us will tune in to like world first raiders and various bits and pieces like that, but that's because we're interested in the race rather than the actual organization for the most part. Like, and I think the same happens with PvP. Like, because the biggest thing that PvP did back in the day, and you know, long-time WoW viewers will notice, is that that's pretty much all you'd find on Warcraft videos back in the day. Is it was all PvP montages, like with the exception of like the really big machiners.
Yes.
So
because I was going to say like illegal Danish.
Fucking illegal Danish.
I love illegal Danish.
I actually went and watched that on YouTube.
Do you want to join my guild? Join my guild?
No, of course you like it. One of the main characters are gnome.
Exactly.
But yeah, I mean, I think people go to Twitch to watch when they're watching the PvP stuff. They're more going for the personality behind the camera.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, we'll take Asmongold as a big example. You know, like he gets criticized a lot for being someone who's just chatting, but does the occasional WoW content, but like he'll watch videos on his stream with his chat and he'll put his input there and everything else, you know. And a lot of the time he's not, you know, when he's not doing the WoW content, he's still got people watching and listening for his opinion. So it's more personality driven stuff than anything else. And I think that's a big thing about Warcraft, because it can be very stale. It's like it's why I don't stream my mount runs. Do you really want me swapping into 20 characters watching me kill the same 4 bosses? All right, guys, we're going to do like a 4-hour stream. I'm going to go log on 20 of my characters and kill 4 world bosses.
You bring up a good point. That's what I do treat like the mount runs like. I treat those as like, in a way, just chatting inside of WoW, because my goal is to talk with people there and be talking to the Twitch. It's like a podcast that will never be put on audio because I don't want to be editing another podcast. But yeah, it's that connection.
Yeah, no, there's absolutely that connection, but like, I don't know. I think there's also a set amount of planning as well, like pre-planning, like what you want to do on that sort of stream, especially with like a large audience. Yeah. Like you can't turn around and be like, well, today I'm just going to do this. You have to plan what you want to do. Like he plans and does EU and NA transmog competitions and like mount offs and everything else. And that's something you have to plan for and give your chat a date for something you want to do, you know?
Yeah.
Like, for all the shit that Asmon gets sometimes, he is very, very intellectually clever about how he organizes his streams.
Yeah, and he's actually somebody who's definitely come around a lot and like has really been doing a lot of good talk on topics, yeah. On topics, yeah, like mental illness, the abuse that we've had recently. I mean, he's really he's been using his platform for good. And yeah, I think you bring up a good point that it's the personality on Twitch that we're going for. Because I remember when I started my podcast, I was like, okay, I got to cover all this news. And someone said, no, cover what you like, cover what you want to do. But someone said, they're not coming to hear this news that they hear in every other place. They're coming for you.
Exactly. And that was one of the big feedbacks we heard here, which is why we pivoted away from talking about what we do and talking about the news and more talking to people around the community, because it's their stories that people get the chance to hear. It's about finding your niche, finding what you're good at, and being good at that.
Yeah.
Which is why I turn around and I play Sonic games really badly on stream, like once a year.
And you know, I realized I was playing Horus this past week, and I got reset on this one level that the game did to me what I did to you during one of the things, and I was like, okay, this is karma. I reset you.
Oh yeah. Well, you deserved it though.
I mean, I still feel bad for Frazley. I tuned in for one of his streams. He was doing a Iron Man challenge in Tanara's, and I forget exactly what I did, but I sent some message or something, and as I was logging off, he looked away to like look at the message. 3 or 4 guys started chasing after him. He's like, oh no. And I'm like, oh, I'm supposed to be logging off, but no, Frazley, no. Dead. Iron Man challenge done because I sent the wrong message to Frazley.
Nice.
Hey, no, it wasn't you. It was me not realizing my surrounding, not realizing that those trolls, I knew that those trolls respawn there, and I should have, and I knew they have a bad respawn timer, and I'm just like, I wasn't thinking smart.
Yeah. It's really funny, Manny, because I literally told him afterwards that he probably could have just run into the instance and he would have been fine.
He was close enough.
Yeah,
he was closer than he would have been trying to run to Gadgetzan and pulling another train of mobs onto him.
See, I learned how to be better each time.
Oh my goodness, it's so WoW is a game sometimes.
Yes,
it really is a game. Oh my goodness. I'll tell you something I have done on the beta is I went and logged on and had a look at a lot of the cosmetics.
Nice.
Oh my goodness. Like, because I hadn't logged on since like really early in the alpha when I was doing a lot of Torghast runs.
Yeah. And
that character select screen with all the customization and the fact that they show spell animations for like your character, it's so different now. Like,
it gets you the hype. You're like, oh my goodness, this is what I want to, like, you're like, level 1 mage, and you see it standing there, you're like, okay, sure, this is a mage, and you read the descriptions, that's what it used to be. Now, the mage comes in, and he throws arcane magic, and he shoots an ice bolt, and then the comet comes down behind him, and you're like, I don't need to read anything else, I'm in.
Have you seen the Hunter one? Where they, like,
shoot off all the different arcane shots and all of that.
Yeah, he throws a trap on the floor and then he shoots to the left and then shoots to the right. And I'm like, this is so cool. So now when you choose a new character, not only do you get depressed by looking at this massive, great, big, good armor set you won't get till the end game, you also get to look at all the spells you don't get till late game as well.
I do
Unless
like that
you paid for the boost.
Ooh.
They're making their money.
It's all right, we get a free boost in buying Shadowlands. It's fine.
But then
You got
why
the
do you want
heroic
boost?
edition or above, yes.
Because then there's less fun like doing the level experience. Plus it's shorter nowadays.
Yeah, I did the leveling experience. I didn't do it on stream, but I did the leveling experience, and without heirlooms or anything, which heirlooms are now going to be a thing of the past, but I managed to get that done in like 8 hours, and I'm like, okay, new character at like 50, ready to go into Shadowlands.
I'm really hoping this is the case because I'm really considering having because I re-rolled my main to Demon Hunter this expansion because Priest I've had Priest since vanilla. I changed it to Monk for BFA because I didn't like where they were going with Priest because they were finally changing discipline since like they hadn't done it since 3.0 at the Turn of Wrath, and I didn't like what they were doing, and Shadow was still dog shit. So I rolled Monk and I wasn't happy with Monk, so I took a break after the first raid tier, and I didn't come back for BOD, and I came back and I was like, fine, I'm just going to level a Demon Hunter and gear it up, and I'll just play the Demon Hunter. Love the Demon Hunter now. It's so much fun. But with Covenants and Soulbinds, like, I'm going to level one of everything anyway, like for the Covenant story, because I know there's going to be an achievement which is like experience every Covenant story.
Yes.
Yay!
And plus, I mean, you got to go to Revendreth because we'll be partying all night long.
No, I do not. I mean, I'm going to do Revendreth, but that party event is actually the least exciting one, and I know that there's farming in Ardenweald.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
A lot of people want their Mr. Pandaria farm back, don't they?
Oh,
have you seen? Oh my god! I think Wowhead reported on it the other day, but there's like an amphitheater there, which you see like stuff that retells the story of like Legion and BFA, and the first thing my brain jumped to was the really bad acting from Avatar: The Last Airbender
Yes.
when they did it in the show. I was just like, I hope it's as corny as that. I really do.
Of in Morrowind, in one of the expansions, there was an amphitheater like that. But they were retelling stories of Elder Scrolls, and they had some bad acting there.
Amazing.
And a fun fact, sorry to derail, but I found out that Harvest Moon's actually on Steam. It's under a different name. It's like, I forget what it's called, but like they remastered Harvest Moon and made it a different game.
So like a spiritual successor or actually Harvest Moon?
It can't be a spiritual successor because there's a new Harvest Moon coming out on the Switch.
It's actually the original Harvest Moon because it's the name is now with one of the publishers, but the original developers were able to take back their game and re-release it.
This literally just sounds like someone just took the core mechanic of Harvest Moon, repackaged it so they wouldn't get sued by Nintendo.
Oh no!
And stuck it up there and called it like
it's the original
Star Boo Manani, you know, just so they don't get copyright struck by anybody.
Reaping Lunar Flare?
Ooh, that's a good name. I like it.
Actually, that could be a spell name.
It could be. Frazley's gonna go look for it now.
Story of Seasons. Story of
Seasons. Okay.
So not only is it Harvest Moon repackaged, it also dips close to Age of Seasons from Zelda as well. Literally ripping off two Nintendo franchises in the process. Love it.
Check out Peanut Butter Gamer because it's also on Switch. So he does a whole thing on it.
Yeah, we're gonna say spiritual successor. Maybe it's the same development that has like moved off, and Nintendo retained the rights. So they're like, yeah, we're gonna do this. It's like what did they? D&D had like their edition and people didn't like it, so that's when Pathfinder showed up.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So that's kind of like what it is, where it's like the brains behind it don't have the name, so spiritual successor.
Yeah.
That's the one. Oh my goodness.
Kind of like how like some of the new games are. We're Diablo, but we're not Diablo.
Yeah. Like you mean like Path of Exile and
Torchlight and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Which I want to play. I want to play all those. So I'm not at all dishing on those. I'm saying that, but yeah.
There's not enough time to play all of these games.
I mean, hopefully with like the I don't need to grind AP in Shadowlands, I'll have more time in between stuff to like actually play other games where I'm not like, oh, but I'm falling behind on my main.
I mean, I want to see in Shadowlands what the end game works out to be.
Yeah.
Like from what I've established, it's already world quests. There's already renown. There's like renown is like reputation. It just renown. Renown is the world quest of reputation. World quests are daily quests that were repackaged. Renown is reputation that's been repackaged.
So yes, I will say that renown is kind of a repackaged reputation, but they are existing at the same time. What I'm going to tell you is that at a certain point, you may never have to do another world quest again, and you can stay up to date.
As long as that means that anima I can do without having to do world quests. Thank God.
So anima, right? While you're thinking anima power, and you're like, oh no, this is AP again, right? It's actually closer to resources, like the war resources or order hall resources, where at a certain point you'll have so much of it that you won't even know what to do with it. What you're going to find is that instead of our daily emissaries, you have the callings, and these callings are based off of whatever your covenant is. They'll be like, oh, we need you to help one of the other areas because, you know, you're a part of Revendreth, and Maldraxxus always used to help Revendreth, so we need you to get things settled over in Maldraxxus so that they'll owe us later on. You can go out there and do world quests if you so choose. If you're like myself, and apparently other people in the show that are like, I never want to see another world quest again, you could then instead run dungeons. And every dungeon boss that you kill gives you a percentage of the bar you need to fill to complete your calling, and then you're done with it. So what I did was that I ran 2 dungeons, and I was done with that calling. I didn't have to touch a single world quest. If you don't like doing dungeons,
is this in the beta right now?
This is in the beta right now.
That's good, because I remember at the What's Next, Ian was talking about how he wanted it to be where you can kind of do what you want, and less of the, I think, I don't remember if it was Sal or somebody talking about like right now the FOMO of not knowing what to do to get the reward you want.
Yeah. What you could also do is, like, let's say you don't want to do a dungeon group. You're still a solo player, but you've done every world quest. You can hunt down treasures. You can kill off rares. Those will count towards it. I'm not sure exactly of the percentage breakdown of those because I haven't tested on that. When I did the first dungeon, I got like 60% through the bar, right?
Yeah.
So I know that each boss is worth 15%, which is a great thing.
Yeah.
But like going around and just hunting treasures, going around and killing rares, to like maybe, and then be like, okay, I'm going to do 2 of the world quests, or I'm going to do a dungeon and I'm going to do the treasures and that sort of stuff. That sort of flexibility, I think is really good. And that's the kind of player agency that the detail of it has been lost in all the information that's come out. And I think that's what really makes callings superior to the daily emissary world quest thing.
Yes. Oh.
This is something, because a lot of this information has, I think, as you rightly said, has got lost in the last 2 weeks of everything that's just come out. Mm-hmm. So I think I'm going to have to move up my expedition into Shadowlands on the beta a little bit sooner than I was expecting to do. But yeah.
Yeah, I would suggest if anybody got alpha access, that means you're immediately grandfathered into the beta. If you've got beta access, go in there because the end game stuff is very important. We're going to be leveling for, if you're slower, maybe 2 weeks. If you're like me, you're going to be leveled in a matter of hours, right? But where we're going to spend the majority of our time is endgame. So it's very important that we test that, make sure it comes out right. That is something that we enjoy. So that's why I've been testing professions. That's why I've been testing this sort of stuff.
Okay, well, there you go. Anybody else who's in the beta, just like us, Trey? The 3 of us?
And I still want more beta invites. I mean, because
Well, they're gonna be going out weekly.
That's good because like I know I'm taking somebody who has it, but I want more people out there to get the alpha and beta.
I mean, true, but then I also want a level of excitement from it, and I really hope. I'm not sure if this is going to sound greedy or selfish or anything else like that, but I kind of hope they keep the FOMO feeling that they did with Classic, because the excitement level for Classic coming off that really closed beta that they did for it was off the charts, and that thing exploded on launch. Now, it's obviously a very different kettle of fish because those people who already had WoW had access to Classic, and this is obviously an expansion that people have to buy. But I feel like having a level of FOMO and keeping it rather tight as possible would raise a level of excitement for it.
It does, but man brings up a good point about the systems need to be tested.
They do,
yeah,
and the difference being is that I think that between allowing a lot of people into the game it's good to have people of varying play styles in the game to test these things. So you can have people who aren't going to do a lot of that content and want to just do it on a casual level, to people who are going to log in and do all that content every day, and to people, like Manny said, who run the numbers on that sort of thing. And a lot of those people who run the numbers were in like the really early alpha stages and stuff anyway, so they're already going to be there. Like your mythic raiders, your 1%ers, and a lot of the content creators that will run the numbers, and like a lot of the background. My tongue's too big for my mouth. The words, like a lot of the guys who make like a lot of the guides for Wowhead and Icy Veins. Those guys are going to be in there because they're high level in a profile in the community. Like they're going to be being able to like try and do these numbers, but there's got to be a point where you can't just open the floodgates and let everybody in. Maybe stress test the damn thing like they did with WoW Classic, Well,
there's a couple of things that's involved in that. Obviously, they're looking at all those numbers, and the way that they do it is that they look for a certain level of concurrency.
Yes.
Right? So if everybody who got invited in this wave stays active, you're not going to see that many more invites. Because they've got enough people on the server to test it. Mm-hmm. If people jump in and they stop testing after a bit, well, then they want to refresh their numbers so that there are people actively testing in this phase. So waves will come out dynamically based on how the last wave kept up their concurrency. Obviously, they are inviting people who are streamers, content creators, because they want to get that hype, much like you were saying. And inviting the streamers allows them to get that hype without compromising that fear of missing out that you were talking about too. So that's why you do see streamers get invites earlier than other people.
It's free advertising.
Yeah.
At a base level.
Right. But they also do random tests. I know from the shaman community that we didn't see any of the theory crafters get an invite until way late in the alpha. Like I was in there ahead of any of the people who were part of the main theory crafting community for shamans. That said, now they're in there, they're crunching those numbers because now we're hitting beta, right? It's not so like we've got systems that should feel good. That's what alpha is about, making sure the feel of the game is good. And now we're trying to get those numbers down so that every talent, every option that feels good is actually numerically valid. And like you got to have.
There's a lot of work to do with covenants and soulbinds, dude.
And honestly, the biggest thing that I've discovered about the soulbinds is that there's very little that modifies the base abilities. It's more that the conduits, which are agnostic to whichever covenant you have, are going to be doing a lot of the heavy lifting. The various soulbinds are going to have some nice light flavorful things, but nothing that is incredibly strong. Like I'm looking at the strongest ones in Bastion, and I'm looking at like a 5% versatility amp. I'm looking at the strongest ones in the Venthyr Covenant, and it's a 4% damage against a particular target that you have to hit first. Those are things that are like good, but not absolutely backbreaking. So I think
you say that now, but like I'm gonna remind how Eternal Palace went when we had the Benthic gear, and people had wanted, like, for that progression they had to spin for the damage versus aberrations for specific bosses on the Benthic gear, and the damage versus the other thing. There was something else, but like, and were rolling for specific stats as well. So like your top tier players are probably absolutely going to need those numbers crunched for what's going to be best against what and everything else. Like, and this is why I've argued, and I'm going to keep arguing until I actually get the chance to do it, that I think Covenant and Soulbind abilities and bonuses should be kept to non-instance combat. Like,
I made that same suggestion.
I feel like if dungeons, raids, and PvP instance content is kept to the player and the gear they're wearing. So yes, legendaries are a thing, because just like
legendaries are so strong.
Well, the reasons that I would allow legendaries is because tier gear back in the day was a thing that your player would get to improve their power because of the different abilities per tier. So I've got no problem with legendaries being a thing, especially where you can craft them, put the stats and the power that you specifically want in there once you unlock it. But I feel like they'd be doing so much better by turning around and going, it's an RPG choice, but, for a story-wise progression thing, you can't use it in instance combat. Like, it's only for the world and everything else, So, okay, there's world PvP if you want to walk around with PvP mode in, but if you keep it out of instance combat, you literally take it down to how good a player is at their class and like the RNG of gear drops.
And keeping Covenant as a more of a cosmetic choice that you do.
Well, that's exactly it.
Yeah.
I mean, that way you don't have to worry about pissing off your player base because they fear they've taken the wrong choice for any dungeons or raids. And B, it keeps the cosmetic flavor of a story that they want to tell.
So I keep arguing, and I'm going to say that I agree with you and give you my argument behind it.
Yeah.
Was that my argument behind it was that, hey, you want this to be a flavorful choice and you want that flavor to matter? Well, then the player power doesn't need to be attached to it, right? Those covenants should be able to stand on their own, right, without gifting any power. You should want to do Revendreth because that's what appeals to you. You should want to be aligned with the Maldraxxus because that speaks to you, right? And that shouldn't be marred or influenced by the power that you get from these soulbinds and everything. What I had said for soulbinds is, hey, you know what? If you're going to have these soulbinds in, why can't we just have these soulbinds be people that you rescue from the maw? That they're completely agnostic to your covenant. That you would join your covenant, and you would find and rescue these people, and you would get them to come back with you, and they would be your soulbinds regardless of which covenant you are.
Yeah, and everybody would be rescuing the same people because it would obviously be story-based.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I get that. Like, I feel that a lot because it makes sense from a player point of view. It makes sense.
Yeah. So they're not doing that.
No,
but
they're not.
Now we have to deal with how closely can they manage it, and how much hassle will it be for us as players to get the maximum out of that. That maximum is the question. Are you trying to get the maximum enjoyment? Are you trying to get the maximum DPS? Are those two different things? If you, let's take the conduits for example. They recently said, okay, you know what? Conduits are not going to be destroyed. So the thought behind that was that, yeah, conduits are something where you can get a power and you have to make a choice between, okay, do I want to use this one that like increases my ice lance, or do I want to use this one that increases my frozen orb? And let's say they're exclusive. One will be great for AoE, one will be great for single target, right? Right? And that becomes a choice. And like, if you can't have both and you can't easily switch between them, right? That becomes like okay, do I want to have a mage that specializes in single target and that's what I'm going to be? When you can switch between them immediately, well, then the expectation is that, like, hey, this is an AoE boss, switch. Hey, this is a single target boss, switch. And some people would say, hey, you know what? I like having that ability to shift myself to the situation, right? Some people wouldn't. So you're going to make some people happy and some people not happy. That is a given. What Blizzard is trying to do is trying to shift it so some things are you set and you are locked to it, much like, hey, I chose to be a fire mage, so I am great with burst, but I am horrible with like another thing, like let's say cleave, right? Or go ahead.
No, it's just like when it comes to the Covenant, like the fucking conduits, like you said, like my brain immediately goes to, well, Blizzard thinks that this worked during Legion because all people did is they found the power they wanted, and it was just an item level increase. They stuck in their Legion thing, and the old one was gone because they didn't really care anymore, you know, because they were literally just throwawayable. But now, because there are choices, because they've made it like a talent tree, that's why people have got, because they've tied it to like attack, sustainability, and defense, haven't they?
Yeah,
like,
there's the potency for damage and everything.
They've made it like a choice, and I don't think they understood the pressure they've done. The only way I can reasonably see them doing is that replacing it just puts it back in your bag. But then they come back onto the problem that they're trying to avoid, which is we don't want people to respec per battle. And feasibly at this point, the only way I can see it being a workable system that's not going to fuck with anything else in the game on a tier-to-tier basis where they have to rebalance it is to turn around and go, fuck it, we don't care how powerful it is, it doesn't work in raids, dungeons, or PvP.
What about this? You can change it, but it has a 6-hour cooldown.
I mean, that gets round certain bosses, but I can tell you that world first raiders will literally turn around and go, right, you don't do your conduits, we're taking this player, but if this doesn't work, then we need you to have this in your conduit, and then we'll rotate switch later if this hasn't worked.
Yeah. Right.
That's because you need to think a very casual player like Mr. Frazley is probably going to be the best example of this.
Yeah.
Sorry, not Mr. Frazley is going to be the best example of this. You are picking a Covenant based on the fact that it looks cool,
yeah,
and you don't care about anything else.
Exactly, and I admit that.
When I raid, and I only raid Heroic now, I'm looking at going into day one of Heroic, being the best I can be, and pushing whatever that means. Now, if that means that I have to have 4 Demon Hunters, 1 in every Covenant, at a specific gear level, with the Covenant and Soulbind on like a given point where it's going to be the best for what I need it to be for, like, I'm not going to switch boss by boss, but I'll do it raid by raid, you know? Like, if the Fae, the Night Fae, work out best with Demon Hunters because of the hunt in a certain like raid tier, then why wouldn't I play that compared to like another one that's really good with Bastion if they decide to tweak stuff down the line? And this is the problem. Like, we're stepping away from having hundreds upon hundreds of stuff that can trigger and lag the game out to having hundreds of different abilities that they have to rebalance again.
I got a question for you though. Because you've done the 4 Demon Hunter, but like, what happens if Demon Hunter? Are you tanking or are you DPSing?
I DPS.
Okay, so what happens?
I mean, it has been posed that I'm going to tank, but if I'm going to tank, then I'll be leveling up my Protection Paladin.
Oh, but what if they need the magic debuff?
Well, there's other people that play other stuff in the raid that like the raid. Like, my raid group has turned around and gone, we don't care what Covenant you pick. But then that question was posed by a guy who plays who on his account now I think has like 25 paladins, you know, like.
I think you and I are in a similar situation because I help lead a raid team get your crit together, and we have said, and this I said myself, we do not care what Covenant you're in, and I will put that to my raiders. I don't care what Covenant you're in. Myself, I very much care what Covenant I'm in, and I'm going to be running those numbers. I have to make a decision because of the way they've set it up. Am I going to prioritize something that is good in raid for like the most situations? Am I going to set up something that is best in Mythic Plus because that's something I do? I don't have to worry about PvP because that's another consideration that might have been in there, right?
Well,
and
No, go ahead. Keep going.
Yeah.
Keep going.
And I realized that even that doesn't make me the most hardcore, because the most hardcore, they are having a stable of not just for demon hunters, but they'll have a stable of every tank. Because like, let's just say we're dealing with tank, they'll have a stable of every tank, and now they have to consider, do I need to have 4 of every tank so that I have the correct power for this this particular encounter, where it's like, okay, we need more survivability, we don't need that much mobility, so now I'm going to have to ask you to bring in your Maldraxxus and use your fleshcraft to keep yourself alive so that we can fight through. And then on the very next fight, you're going to have to switch out to another character on another covenant, just so that we get that little bit of advantage. And that is a pressure that is often called the mythic tax.
The mythic tax.
Yeah. But I have to realize, and of course there's different variations. You and I are dealing with like a lesser version of that, but I have to realize that Blizzard can't set it up for them without it compromising the benefits that it gives other players. I know that Covenants are right now in a pretty good place for most players. I'm going to have to deal with a certain amount of headache, and I have made the very same arguments for you, where it's like, you know what, take some of this power, and just make it agnostic to Covenants, so that when you eventually realize that, oh my goodness, this Covenant ability is too strong, and you bring it down and something else becomes powerful, I'm not punished for your short-sightedness.
My biggest concern with everything when it comes to borrowed power is, I mean, and Legion's the biggest example of this, and it will always forever remain the biggest example of this, is that power no longer exists if you go back to that content. BFA, we know it's going to exist. We know the neck's going to keep its power. We know Azerite armor is going to continue and exist in that bubble of content. But, you know, we know it's not going to work going into Shadowlands, you know, for whatever reason. The same with Corruptions. But once we're done with Shadowlands content, we don't get to keep Covenant powers the same way that we didn't keep stuff with Garrison stuff, you know? And like for all the crap that Warlords of Draenor are given, I think in terms of borrowed power with the Garrison abilities, the stuff not working in a raid was fine. And I think this is the step that they've gone, where they want to tell the story, but then they lose sightedness on how much that affects the game, and stuff like legendaries and borrowed power make up for the short-sightedness of how... Short-sightedness is the wrong word, but they're trying to make up for the shortfallings of if a class doesn't perform as well as other classes. And the base thing that we should be seeing is that the classes should be as level as possible for whatever value of like class disparity and like class... What's the word they keep
whatever
using?
The delta is between the difference between the classes.
But the classes should be level. You know, there's always going to be some class fantasy that's going to up or down. Shadow Priest being a very good example of like how different that class works compared to everything else in the game. But melee should be on the same level pegging as ranged. Ranged should be dealing more damage because they're not getting as many globals because they deal more damage for the cast time. But everything should work out even, and then we can have fun stuff, you know? Like, a class should not be propped up by borrowed power on a given expansion.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with that. I think the biggest issue I have right now with the way that they set up things is that they put too little into what they had. Okay, one thing that they had in Warlords was the Warlord perks. They were things that you got as you leveled up that would change your abilities. It's sort of returned in Shadowlands, where at like level 58, suddenly you'll get a stronger version of your spell, right? That sort of stuff is where most of the balance for the classes should happen on a base level, much like you're saying. the borrowed powers being balanced against each other, but then having to be balanced against the 16 different permutations that could possibly arise because of whatever. Not even that, because now we're dealing with 30, 33, 32 specs.
How many classes are there in the game?
Well, you don't.
12?
It's not even just the classes. You have to deal with each spec and how it relates to it.
So there are 12. I can't remember. Is there 12, 13, or 14 classes in the game?
There is, I believe, 12. And
okay,
each
so
of those.
You multiply that by 3 because the one.
So 36, yeah.
So 36 specs. Then you've got 4 extra Covenant abilities per class. Yep. So that's another. So 4 by 12. That's another 48.
48. Yeah, but that's 48 that you need to multiply by the 36, right? Yeah. And then you're not even including how those will react to the talents that people will choose, and how those will then be affected by each of those getting legendaries that will adjust the things. They're like testing just yesterday the legendaries that they have. There is a complete different in the way that enhancement will play with one legendary versus another legendary, and having the balance, they're creating their own nightmare. And removing a layer of, what did we say, 48 variables, right? That's not just the 48 variables. That is 48 variables that need to interact with all the other variables. That is an exponential that you remove from there. And then you can make a much tighter focused game. So that is why I have always just said, listen, just shift it out of Covenants, because then that reduces it by an exponential factor of 4, right? Even if you want to keep them there. If you turn them off in instance content, like they have said maybe they'll do for PvP, that reduces it there. But I'm also going to say that I am known as Stubbornly Shaman. I have played Enhancement, I've played Elemental, I've played Resto, I've done this.
But I get you. I leveled in vanilla as a holy disc priest.
Yeah.
So I get you on the stubbornness. Don't worry. I completely get you.
Right? So I get that, like, I'm making a choice that is going to sacrifice power, and if I can do that and still find enjoyment of the game, I don't need my class or like the various permutation that really appeals to me to be the absolute best, but I need them to avoid creating these pratfalls where we're going to see just disgusting deltas, because there will be things that even with rigorous testing on like a closed beta, once it gets out into the open, somebody is going to find some weird little thing. Like I just reported a bug where they have, hey, this ability has a like a 20% chance of giving you 10% of your resource, except that they didn't realize that, okay, there's a talent that causes that same ability to then, if it consumes 5 stacks of that ability, to hit 6 targets. 6 times 20, wait a second, I've got a feedback loop that could give me 120% of what I'm putting into it, and then also goes into other things.
Especially when there are abilities which aren't on the AoE cap as well. Because Demon Hunter's Fell Rush is a good example. Like, and there's like, because the way the only reason I know about this is because I was looking. The momentum build is really strong in Shadowlands.
Oh no, I hate momentum.
Because I know, same. But because Fell Rush is not affected by the AoE cap, and because that into Vengeful Retreat and everything else, and guess what? There's a legendary power that boosts Fell Rush damage by 20% as well.
Isn't there that one that like your immo just like hits everybody around you, so you could just do the I'm gonna run around and hit people now, so you're not actually like, again, okay, so here's a completely separate complaint. Can you please do builds that require like skillful play, and like even if it is an RNG, being able to capitalize on those windows?
You're just going to bring back remove Demon Hunters from the game. That's what you're going to bring back with this discussion.
Just make Demon Hunters a little bit smart. I've never been down on a class. I love the feel of Demon Hunters. I love playing Vengeance. I hate momentum, but I think that Havoc is quite great. My issue with Demon Hunters is that because they have such a relatively basic skill set that only really relies on the same rotation. It's not even a priority. It's the same sort of rotation over and over again. The skill becomes in the down section, and there's very little for people. There's very little room for that.
I have to say that the big part of that though is because they've come so late in the game. In Shadowlands, they're not going to have anything that's been pruned away, quite like a lot of the other classes. They also had very minimal buttons, and that's why Demon Hunter feels so fun to play, because there isn't as many buttons to press. Like, don't get me wrong, I love going over. I think I'm about the only person in my guild that loves Enhancement Shaman, because I just like the idea of just going over, but I look at it and there are buttons to press that I need to make sure I stay on top of. But all those buttons make it fun to play. Like going through, making sure, because I remember like it used to be way better keeping all the elements up, and now you can just rotate through them a little bit. But then use Stormlash and is it Stormlash? Stormstrike.
Yep.
Stormstrike. Stormstrike is so fun. Just hitting that button every time it lights up is so much fun, and I love enhancement because of it.
Okay.
But I'm gonna get. Oh, you go. I've triggered the shade. I've triggered it.
Okay. All right. So I love enhancement. I loved in Legion where you would get certain little like strings of like hitting your Stormstrike because you would have Stormbringer proc. What I hate about the Legion one is because it's so dependent on. But no, it's just because they went too far. It became like the one button spec that I keep deriding Fury about, where it's like, oh, I pressed some buttons and Stormstrike lit up, and Stormstrike just procced, and Stormstrike just procced, and then my entire thing becomes 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 until like eventually the boss falls over.
But the problem with that then becomes that when Stormstrike doesn't light up, the spec is not as fun to play.
Yeah.
And it's like with Demon Hunter, like when you're not in demon form, the spec is not as fun to play because you're not as fast and you're not dealing the extra damage. And the biggest thing that makes it feel fun is that it's just the blade rush. You're flying around the screen. Like that's not even that's just a design choice. And I think that comes with part of the fact that it's been designed so late in the game. I guarantee you, if we had another hero class or another class designed now, it would probably be as less button centric and more fun to play, like the Demon Hunter, compared to everything else in the game, because there's less buttons to it. If this is the thing when they say about pruning, and I think a lot of people are like, oh, but I like Expel, or Y works really well. I don't want to lose it, and I don't want to lose my class fantasy. But then if they have a lot less buttons, you know, yeah, your rotation becomes dumbed down and for noobs or whatever you want to call it, but it might also become more fun to play because you're not hammering so many buttons.
Yeah, I think the hidden middle ground is like these moments of glory. And you feel it. Like there's when you're playing like Elemental Shaman and you like get that lava burst and it goes right and like it procs another lava burst and you do 3 lava bursts in a row and you're like, oh my goodness, and that like leads you right into your Earth Shock, and so you land your Earth Shock and that empowers the next thing. Those are more moments of glory. They're like small moments. It doesn't have to be a big like metamorphosis and I like went through, but that's something. Disc Priest, right, doesn't have many moments of glory in my book, but Shadow Priest, when you swap into Void form and you're just like, I need to keep this going as long as possible, yes, that is a very visceral, great moment, right? That then it's the mini game of the spec.
Oh yeah.
And I think that's where they need to go. Find those mini games for the spec. Arcane trying to like balance its mana, or even like where you have like wings for Paladin, where like, oh my goodness, for the next X seconds, I am a monster, and like you just try and get back to that thing as fast as possible, or prolong it as fast as possible, or every time it happens, it changes your rotation. It could be these 3 buttons that you use normally, and then all of a sudden you get this proc, and instead of being 1 2 3, you're like 3 2 1. right? That could be just all it takes, and I think that's the hidden gold in like most of the great moments in World of Warcraft.
I'll tell you where this all changed, and it's actually gonna probably surprise a lot of people. Death Knights back in Wrath is where the game changed. The minute they introduced the rune system and as an alternate power is where the game design changed for classes. Because then we got holy power for paladins, and that worked out well. And we got shadow orbs for priests in Cataclysm as well. And then everything has kind of changed to like focus for hunters, and you know, everything that's become an alternate resource, and then it's become propping up the classes and trying to make them feel different rather than everything having a health and a mana bar. You know?
Yeah, everything changed when Airburst attacked, but I would say that I would say that yeah, they do get into those fixations with like the alternate power bar. They do get into those fixations where they want to baseline all healers, or like, hey, man, active mitigation was great. Let's make sure everybody does active mitigation, and then we lose the evasion tanks. We lose like these different styles of play. So I really do think that there was a bit of a reset now with Shadowlands where they're like, yeah, you know what? Like, we don't need to have all these warlocks on the same resource thing. We don't need to have shamans have like their version of a fury bar, which is all that Maelstrom power was. Right? And hopefully they learn from that. So I do see some good things coming in Shadowlands. I just, we criticize because we care and we want them to get better.
That's a good point. Yeah. I think that's a good point to end the show. We've overrun a fair bit. But yeah, I want to thank everybody for being here and listening to us. Well, me and Manny rant about the game. Frazley's just agreeing. He's like, I have no idea what they're talking about.
Yeah, I'm just like,
I play the game. I go and get some pixels that I get to fly on. You know,
as long as when I hit stuff, I have fun, and like most of my friends are happy, and we can all be like in a circle, like dancing and holding hands. I'm all good.
That's the one. Manny, where, if they want to look around the internet, where can they find you, my friend?
So, as I said before, you can find me on Twitch and on Twitter at TruVillainManny. That is true without the E. You will find me there, and if you follow me on Twitter, you'll see all the shows that are currently going and soon to be announced.
Special stuff. Frazley!
You can find me on Twitter at FrazleyTastic, where I think I'm not on Twitter as much as I am, and then I end up being like on there for like hours and retweeting and tweeting and stuff like that. You can find my main podcast, Frazlecast. Well, when I say main, I mean it's the one that I think I put the most amount of work into, because that takes me hours on the weekends. But it's I'm on so many different podcasts. They're all my babies. But you can find them at gnome.podcast.com, and then you can find me practically every day at gnome.live, where I'm eating like beans and stuff like that. Like I'm either eating like a coconut or spoiled milk or something like that, and just hoping you have a good time.
No more bloody nuclear chips, eh?
No, once I can't do more than once. Like the closest I go to is every once in a while I bring back those sour pickle balls. I can't do those too often either, because
you're just gonna rot the lining of your stomach, man.
That's
burns.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. As always, ladies and gentlemen, you can find me on my main Twitter account at Titans Creed. If you want just the streams and the videos and the podcast, you got at Gaming Phoenix. Otherwise, you can find the podcast live every Sunday at twitch.tv/Project Phoenix Productions. But if you want to catch the VOD, if you can catch us live, you can catch us over at youtube.com/Project Phoenix Productions. Thank you very much for joining us this week. It's been fun. Thank you very much, TruVillainManny, for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on and talk all things.
I'm really glad to be here. Sorry we talked so much.
We did.
Hey, what I love is we revealed a passion of you, and I love it.
You did. Frazley, as always, thank you very much for being here.
Oh, thank you for putting up with me every single week, trying to make you laugh and stuff like that. I think I actually was down on my pun quota, but I know
are down on the pun quota. Yeah.
Manny had some good puns today. Even like your raid team had me laughing. I'm just like, yeah.
The name of that raid team is too good. I mean, there are some old raid team names that I really do enjoy, but we really can't mention them anymore because You can't get away with that stuff in today's day and age.
The one I want to win one day is Strawberry Puppy Kisses. I'm always rooting for them to win the world first.
Jesus. Yes, no, you're not wrong. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us for Stories Around Azeroth. We'll be back next week. Who we got next week, Mr. Frazley?
We've got, and I have this right in front of me, absolutely. We've got the Warriors, Berserker, and Navix.
So join us next week for those gentlemen there. But yes, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us. We'll see you next time. But before we leave, as Mr. Frazley always likes to say,
be awesome. And I don't have an ending pun, so I'll just end it there.
Whether Horde or Alliance, find more stories around Azeroth on iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube.